Our painterly art style means that the brush strokes that we put onto the page are going to matter a lot. With this kind of art style, our main focus is going to be on the brushes. It basically means that we will be prioritizing the impression of our brush strokes, and I'll be going over what aspects can help with this. For this art style, we want our brush strokes to really stand out, compared to using a normal flat brush where no matter how you use it, it will always come out solid. And a really easy way we can do this is by playing with the opacity. The reason we're using opacity is because it's a good way to create form, because some parts are going to be darker and some parts are going to be lighter, due to the way the brush strokes overlap. Having some parts that are light and some parts that are dark tells the viewer that light isn't hitting the surface in a uniform manner, which creates form. Take a sphere for example. Some parts are lighter and some parts are darker, and this creates the illusion of form. This makes opacity a very good technique in creating details with only hard brushes, with little to no effort, as opposed to having a flat color layer first and painstakingly adding in the details afterwards. We've simply condensed the two steps into one. When it comes to textures, you can choose to have it or not choose to have it. Either way works, but having textured brushes do somewhat help, mainly because of the brush tip. Non-textured brushes typically have a circular or square shape, whereas textured brushes typically come with an irregular shape for the brush tip. And it's this shape that is the selling point. The irregular shape looks like a bunch of smaller brush strokes are being drawn, and the painterly art style is all about brush strokes. This is similar to why we want to play with the opacity. A lot of work condensed into a simple step. If this is confusing to follow, you can just use as many brushes as possible. Us digital artists will probably shrivel up if we are separated from an undo button. Traditional artists don't really have a convenient rewind button, which is why I recommend not undoing anything at all when rendering. Not only is this to replicate reality, but also good for building confidence in your art. If you did make a mistake, you can just paint over the mistake. And with the additional brush strokes that you're going to be adding, it might turn out even better, so don't be discouraged to make mistakes. In fact, this art style thrives on mistakes, so be as loose as you can. In the process, I will be commentating over it, and I'll add things that I think are somewhat important, but not big enough to have its own section. To begin, I just start with adding in the flat colors, and depending on the surface, I'll paint the colors in a little differently. And by that, I mean I'll adjust the opacity depending on what kind of surface it is. So for the hair, we will be using a brush with low opacity and painting in the direction of the hair flow. For other parts like the skin, I still lower the opacity a bit to mimic real paints, but not as much as the hair. I also think I forgot to record the hair, so my bad. As I said, opacity is a very good way of conveying form, so if you happen to paint in a way that goes against the form, the mistake stands out more, as opposed to using solid flat coloring. I think that's probably the only downside to this. Coloring the shadow of the hair is also the same process, except the strokes are a lot smaller and shorter. I'm kinda chicken scratching, which adds to the art style a lot more, I think. And I also think that it's both a pro and a con, because due to the nature of the art style, it adds a lot more detail, but it's also a con in the sense that it kind of promotes bad habits. So keep that in mind. Once I've got the general shadow down, I try to blend in the shadow smoother into the lighter parts of the hair, while trying to keep the impression of the brush strokes as evident as possible. You don't really need to do this. I think so long as there are enough brush strokes to create noise, then it should be fine. I also added in reflected light as well, and you might want to use a low opacity for that, as to not paint over the things underneath. I'm also not using any blending modes as well, aside from the normal mode, so it forces me to draw in the shadows with colors that I think would work, because if it doesn't work, I can just go over it again with more brush strokes. I think this kind of art style is almost like an anti-perfectionism style, because you're not really punished for making a mistake, you're kind of rewarded for it. I also changed the line art color from black to a darker color of the object that the line is surrounding, because black is a little too bold of a color, so it stands out quite a lot. So after I'm done, I changed the color to reduce the impression of black. I also want to mention that I rendered the local areas one at a time. Like, I'll render the hair, and then after I'm done with that, I'll go with the skin, and after that, and I'll go with the clothes, stuff like that, right? You don't really want to do this. This isn't specific to this art style, it's more of a general tip. What you really want to do is actually to render everything at the same time, because it makes it harder because if you do it one at a time, it makes it harder for all the elements to blend together cohesively. And that's pretty much all. Hopefully you got something out of this, and good luck with your art journey.